Consideration of resolutions. Will the clerk please read the title to SJR 007?
SJR 007 by Senators Rodriguez and Gonzalez and Representatives Valdez A. and Tipper concerning recognition of Cesar Chavez Day and honoring Dolores Huerta.
Senator Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request Senate Joint Resolution 21-007 be read in its entirety, and I move the bill or the resolution.
Senator Rodriguez, will you please move the resolution? Senator Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Joint Resolution 21-007.
Will the clerk please read Senate Joint Resolution 007?
Senate Joint Resolution 007 by Senators Rodriguez and Gonzalez and Representatives Valdez A. and Tipper concerning recognition of Cesar Chavez Day and honoring Dolores Huerta. Whereas Cesar Estrada Chavez was born on March 31st, 1927 on a small farm near Yuma, Arizona, and was raised by migrant farm workers. And whereas during the Great Depression, Cesar Chavez's father lost his small farming business, and they, like many other families, became migrant workers. They joined some 30,000 workers who followed the crops from Arizona into Southern California. And whereas Cesar Chavez left school after the 8th grade to labor in the fields and vineyards of the Southwest to help support his family. And whereas at the age of 17 in 1944, Cesar Chavez joined the Navy and served his country. And whereas after experiencing years of discrimination and unfair working conditions, Cesar Chavez dedicated his life to improving the plight of farm workers through struggle, sacrifice, and self-denial. And whereas Cesar Chavez formed his own organization in 1962, the National Farm Workers Association, which later became the United Farm Workers of America, UFW, to help farm workers like himself win equal rights and fair treatment. And whereas when recognizing Cesar Chavez, it is only right to recognize the accomplishments of UFW co-founder Dolores Huerta for her work on behalf of farm workers. And whereas Dolores Huerta brought forward a unique voice on behalf of women to ensure all workers have fair representation. And whereas in 1965, Cesar Chavez led a strike of California grape pickers to demand higher wages and urged all Americans to boycott table grapes as a show of support. And whereas Cesar Chavez believed in the principles of nonviolence practiced by Mahatma Gandhi and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and used tactics such as boycotts, marches, strikes, and fasts to lead a successful 5-year boycott that gained millions of supporters and new members for farm labor unions across the United States. And whereas by 1970, Cesar Chavez and the UFW had persuaded grape growers to accept union contracts and had successfully organized almost the entire industry. And whereas during a fast in 1972, Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta coined the phrase, "Si se puede," which in English means, "Yes, it can be done," reflecting their conviction that failure happens only by giving up on nonviolent tactics. And whereas the work of Cesar Chavez was informed by his devout Catholic faith, and he traditionally included images of Our Lady of Guadalupe at marches and demonstrators and led supporters in praying the rosary. And whereas in 1975, Cesar Chavez and the UFW's efforts resulted in the California Agricultural Labor Relations Act, a groundbreaking law protecting the right of farm workers to unionize. And whereas Cesar Chavez tirelessly devoted himself to making all people aware of the struggles of farm workers and their need for better pay and safer working conditions. And whereas Cesar Chavez and the organization he co-founded with Dolores Huerta, the UFW, achieved the following: the first collective bargaining agreement between farm workers and growers in the continental United States, and the first union contracts requiring rest periods, clean drinking water, hand washing facilities, and protective clothing against pesticide exposure, and the first ban on pesticide spraying while workers were in the fields, and the first ban on DDT and other dangerous pesticides, and the first and only performing pension plan for retired farm workers, and the first union contracts regulating safety and sanitary conditions in farm labor camps and banning discrimination in employment and sexual harassment of female workers, and abolition of the use of the infamous short-handed hoe that crippled generations of farm workers, and extension of state coverage under unemployment, disabilities, and worker compensation to farm workers. And whereas on April 23rd, 1993, Cesar Estrada Chavez died peacefully in his sleep in San Luis, Arizona, and whereas in 1994, President Bill Clinton posthumously awarded Cesar Chavez the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian honor in the United States. And whereas Cesar Chavez influenced and inspired millions of Americans to seek social justice and civil rights for the poor and disenfranchised in our society, and whereas it is important to continue Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta's legacy of advocating for the rights of agricultural workers, including efforts currently underway, now therefore be it resolved by the Senate of the 73rd General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the House of Representatives concurring herein, that we, the members of the General Assembly, honor a man and woman who devoted their lives to improving the working conditions, safety, and dignity of so many on the day that the entire state observes as Cesar Chavez Day, March 31st, 2021, while recognizing Dolores Huerta.
Senator Rodriguez.
Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, please be seated. Thank you for standing for that. Just a privilege for me. A story I want to tell you. I was raised in somewhat of a political family, working on campaigns, and in 1986, as a youngster coming out of high school, I had the opportunity to drive Cesar Chavez around the state and escort him around and listen to him speak and talk about. It was during the grapes boycott and the pesticides being used, and I was an 18-year-old saying why I could be hanging out with my friends, and I'm driving this person that I don't know around town. And what missed me as a youngster and as I got older and got to see the work that this man does frames a lot of what I do as I learned, because I didn't realize the honor I got at the time. But I try to frame my policy in looking at the underserved and the underpopulated and what this man did to raise the underserved and the ones who felt voiceless to bring their voice to the table and make movements is really a foundation of what I try to do in policy. And I have a couple quotes that I wanted to put here. It's ironic that those who till the soil, cultivate and harvest the fruits, vegetables, and other foods that fill your tables with abundance have nothing left for themselves. This struck a chord with me just dealing with the COVID virus last year and the people who didn't have the opportunity to stay home and stay safe that still had to go do the work so the rest of us could be home and be safe during what we were dealing with. So I just want to recognize this day. It's an honor for me to be here. My last quote from him is going to be, preservation of one's own culture does not require contempt or disrespect for any other cultures. I just want to thank you guys all for being here, and I'm honored to be a part of this presentation, and I want to keep it short because other people want to speak, but thank you very much.
Senator Hawkins Lewis.
Thank you, Madam President. I wanted to speak about a line in the resolution, if I could, recognizing Cesar Chavez. It's only right to recognize Dolores Huerta. You see, my mom, Georgia Hawkins Lewis, actually worked with Dolores on immigrant rights issues in the 1980s. They both are from a farming, ranching, mining mountains of northern New Mexico. And Cesar and Dolores would actually come to my church when I was growing up as a kid, St. Anne's in Charlotte. And Dolores would actually stay with my family. She's been such an inspiration to me. And when she founded the Agricultural Workers Association, they were some of the first groups to do voter registration drives and housing work. And it really inspired my family, my mom, to continue that work in the South. And later, when Cesar and Dolores launched the National Farm Workers Association, it was really those organizational skills that she had that really kept that organization going. So I just wanted to share that personal story with you. It's wonderful to see the recognition that Cesar and Dolores have these days. I think Cesar was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize at least 3 different times. And our current president, Joe Biden, has a bust of Cesar Chavez behind the Resolute desk in the Oval Office. We honor that brave man and courageous woman today, which would have been his 93rd birthday. So thank you, members.
Senator Gonzalez.
Gracias, Madam President. Buenos dias. Buenos dias. That was weak. Buenos dias, y'all. Buenos dias. Órale. Y'all, it's like my favorite time of year because it's Cesar Chavez Day. It's the anniversary of Selena Quintanilla's passing. It's Trans Day of Visibility. It's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day to be brown. And it's a beautiful day to honor the legacy of those who fought for justice. I want to say just something brief about the importance of solidarity in these times. Because Cesar Chavez was a man who put in the work. driven by faith, driven by a belief in justice. He believed that if you do not have money, if you do not have influence, if you organize enough people, that you can actually make concrete changes in people's lives. And so how did he go about doing that work? He did that by organizing. And he did that through solidarity, by building alliances with folks who oftentimes weren't taken into consideration when decisions were being made. So what he did is organize alongside Larry Itliong and Philip de la Cruz, the leaders of the Filipino Farm Workers Association. This whole Asian and Latino solidarity thing, we're trying to act like it's new. Nah, man. Our elders have been doing this work for generations. That solidarity, that justice work, y'all, that is what true power looks like. Putting a woman who had 13 kids as his number 2 was unheard of back in the day. And yet Dolores Huerta was like, órale, si se puede. And those are examples that we use here in community to continue that work. The last thing I'll say is this. Dolores and Cesar and Larry and Philip understood the power of story. And so what they did in order to further the boycott is they didn't just go and march 300 miles from Delano to Sacramento. They also put young people on trains, buses, and planes to go across the country, to stand outside in front of grocery stores, to say, yo, you know those grapes you're about to buy? Let me tell you about the work that I put in order to pick those, and I'm 15 years old. One of those people was Isidoro Jaramillo from right here in Denver, Northsider. Isidoro dedicated his whole life to justice, and this man ended up being the #1 volunteer on my campaign. So, Izzy, if you're watching, what's up, Holmes? What I will say is this. Cesar Chavez organized his life dedicated to the principles of bending systems towards justice. And he also said, and I'll leave y'all with this quote, "You are never strong enough that you don't need help." So as we continue on in this work, as we navigate multiple crises, the pandemic, the racial reckoning, the economic crisis, the climate crisis, so many things that are pulling at us, and sowing division, discord, and disunity, let us live by Cesar's principles. You're never strong enough that you don't need help. You can always reach across the aisle, reach across and build solidarity, reach across and do the work towards justice. Thank y'all, colleagues.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Madam President. And colleagues, I rise in support of Senate Joint Resolution 7. I don't normally come and speak on resolutions. However, this one's particularly important to me because so much of the work that I've done in this building and my own values as a person are informed by the work of Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta. I've actually had the incredible fortune to have dinner with Dolores Huerta, and I can't tell you what it's like to sit at a dinner table with a living legend like her. And the work that they did to lift so many people from poverty, to give them basic workplace protections, to be able to just spend time and to learn from all the work that she did was such an inspiration. I don't normally share, but my family's history is also tied very closely to the work of Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta. My dad was born in 1936 in Asherton, Texas, and for a large period of his life, he was also a migrant laborer. And he would tell me stories about the working conditions. And thankfully, despite never even having gone to high school, with only a middle school education, my dad was able to get a job doing substation maintenance for Xcel Energy, joined the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, and was able to have a living wage for his family. That living wage allowed me to go to college, to go to Georgetown University, a Jesuit university, and to learn about the values that the Catholic Church stands for: social justice, working for the poor and disenfranchised. So much of my life stems from the work that Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta did. So colleagues, I appreciate your time hearing this resolution today. I appreciate that it is an annual recognition and acknowledgement that we make to these two incredible individuals. The work continues. There's still so much more that we can do for not only for all workers across Colorado, but particularly those that provide the produce and the food that we enjoy every day. Thank you, colleagues.
Senator Danielson.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, colleagues. Today we acknowledge a truly amazing man. Cesar Chavez, along with Dolores Huerta, took on the fight for agricultural workers' rights. For those who were responsible for feeding this nation, yet were mistreated, exploited, and abused. The things he fought for were basic human rights. To have a minimum wage guarantee for a hard day's work, to have water breaks, to have a union so that workers could stand up for themselves without facing horrifying retribution. These workers endured other abuses, being sprayed with pesticides, which resulted in serious health issues, including babies being born without limbs. They were raped and sexually harassed. They were forced to live in terrible living conditions. There was rampant human trafficking, and when they tried to organize for their rights, they faced violent retribution from law enforcement and the growers. And so Cesar and Dolores fought. They fought with strikes, boycotts, and activism. They fought for the basic human rights for workers who broke their backs putting food on America's table. So today we honor this man's legacy, his contributions to this great nation that we live in. And this year, here in Colorado, we have before us the opportunity to do so much more than just honor Cesar Chavez with our voices today. We have the opportunity to use the power we were given by the people of Colorado to lift up tens of thousands of farm workers here in Colorado. Because like it or not, the reality here in Colorado is that agricultural workers still do not have some of the basic human rights and the protections that Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta fought for. Many farm workers in Colorado are not guaranteed the minimum wage. Agricultural workers are not paid overtime. They are not guaranteed food breaks or cold, clean water. They still experience sexual harassment and fierce retribution if they dare to come forward to advocate for themselves. In fact, they're still barred from joining a union in order to help them advocate for workplace safety and better pay. These are the same things that Mr. Chavez fought for 50 years ago. And here in Colorado in 2021, we are being asked to live up to the values that say those who labor in the fields to put food on our table deserve the human rights protections afforded nearly every single other worker in the state. We cannot honor Cesar Chavez without acknowledging that Colorado is decades behind other states, not just California, but states like Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, Kansas, Nebraska, Minnesota, Hawaii, Maryland, New York, Idaho, Kansas, Louisiana, Maine, New Jersey, and Oregon, and Wisconsin in ending exclusion of farm workers from labor protections. So on this Cesar Chavez Day in 2021, decades after the work Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta and thousands of workers who fought and bled, this day I stand before you and call upon this legislature and our governor to do more than simply say we honor Cesar Chavez. We have the opportunity to lift up tens of thousands of workers in our economy who have been left behind, to be a voice for the voiceless, to stand up for people who are often ignored in our society, who are too often exploited by an economic system that deliberately excludes them, to recognize the humanity and dignity of the thousands of workers trying to make an honest day's pay. Here's our chance for us to go to bat for a group of folks who don't have a lot of power inside this building, for us to say to them that our values call on us to recognize their worth no matter what. Here in the Colorado State Senate in 2021, we have the opportunity to pass the Farm Worker Bill of Rights. This is our chance, ours in the legislature and for Governor Polis, to fight against injustices and indignities as Mr. Chavez fought against them many decades ago. To do exactly what we honor this man for today with the observance of the holiday that bears his name. Let's not squander this chance. Thank you so much.
Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Madam President. I wasn't going to come down here and talk because I'm a full supporter of what Mr. Cesar Chavez did in the ag community and the work he's done. But to turn this into a political now advocacy for a specific bill has made it a challenge for me, because there were statements made that just simply aren't true. Many and thousands of workers still being abused. People unable to unionize. Well, in California, when they did unionize, what is there left? 1% of the farm workers left that are unionized? That's not neither here nor there, because the conversation should remain about what Mr. Chavez did. And we're all proud of the work he did. What I will tell you is to keep in mind, if we're going to talk about a bill that's coming through the legislature rather than a resolution, you have to ask yourself a question. Why do so many of these workers come back year after year after year for 20, 25, and 30 years and then bring their children back to work in the same place? Are there some things that agriculture wants to work on? Absolutely. But I can tell you, agriculture as a whole continues to need good workers just like any other industry. And as they search for those workers, and when they have those workers, they pay them, they take care of them. I mean, there's people out there right now that provide housing provide vehicles, and still pay over minimum wage. I'm not going to talk long. Ladies and gentlemen, let's stay focused on what this resolution is about. And this resolution is about a wonderful man that did good work. Let's not turn it into the political football that it seems that it's going to be going. I support the resolution. I support the work that Mr. Chavez did, and I urge you to support that work as well. Thank you, Madam President.
Senator Rodriguez.
Thank you, Madam President. I request the current roll call be added as co-sponsors. Oh,
We'll vote on it first, and then we'll have a preview of your next motion.
I'm-
Any further discussion on Senate Joint Resolution 7? Are there any no votes on Senate Joint Resolution 7? With a vote of 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, Senate Joint Resolution 7 is adopted. What a surprise, Senator Rodriguez.
Having full confidence on how that was going to go, I respectfully, secondly, request the roll call be added as sponsors.
Is there any objection? Seeing no objection, the current roll call will be added as co-sponsors to Senate Joint Resolution 7.